Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video we have another popcorn alert as Liz Truss has been sharing her wisdom for the benefit of the Tories, and a former Tory MP has come out saying, look, she looks a bit unwell, she probably needs help, and she certainly needs to shut up. You remember Liz Truss, the shortest serving Prime Minister who's had to be binned after nearly causing a run on the pound within days of heading up the government, and who caused permanent damage to a lot of people's pension pots. Still not enough mentioned about that. The same Liz Truss who also managed to lose herself a nice safe Tory seat at the election, and she doesn't get to blame that on the Tory leadership who took over from her exclusively, because let us not forget, the polling had Jeremy Hunt's seat completely gone. I thought he was gone. I was absolutely gobsmacked when he won his seat. Gobsmacked. The MRP polls gave him no chance. But the same MRP polls thought that Truss would actually narrowly win her seat, so it's very much a toss-up. In other words, the public's general attitude to the Tories, upon which MRP polls are largely based, meant that the sort of seat Truss had was way more easily winnable than the one Hunt had. And yet Hunt, who was literally in charge of the knackered economy which caused the Tories' unpopularity, still won his seat, which suggests that Jeremy Hunt was a much more credible candidate than Liz Truss. And yet Truss still thinks that she has something useful to say about why the Tories lost and what they need to do to get things back on track. But before I get onto her wisdom, which I'm sure will come as no surprise to you all, is fairly vague, and the policies that it's with when she does present a detailed policy, it's not really the sort of thing any party should really be considering, certainly not talking about. So there's an article in the Mirror reporting that Liz Truss sometime last summer said to a group, people shouldn't be allowed to retire until they're 80. Now, as things currently stand, those who are, like myself, not close to retirement are going to be looking at state pension 67 before you can get that. And that's people my age. If you're much younger, be prepared for that going up again before you get anywhere near your 60s. But never mind the specifics of the policy itself. Imagine putting that in a Conservative manifesto. Imagine having a policy of raising the pension retirement age by an additional 13 years in one go. A policy which kills off support almost everywhere. I know the Tories rely upon votes of the elderly, but all they'd have left is the over 80s if they did this. Frankly, if any Conservative in senior positions ever listens to her again, it will be quite remarkable. And yes, some seem to be. She was allowed to run the country. What is she remembered for? First of all, killing off our longest reigning monarch. Okay, that wasn't her fault. But then causing a huge crash in investor confidence with an unfunded budget statement that she doesn't regret. And she thinks she can solve our complex problems with low productivity and a growing retired population by making people work until they're 80. It's this childlike approach she has to complex problems which marks her out as dangerously incompetent. How are you going to deal with an ever-increasing retired population without immigration or strong public services, Liz? Well, we just won't have a retired population. Okay, good thinking. Politically incompetent as well. I think it's fair to say that the modern Tory does not mind incompetence administratively, as long as you can win elections. But imagine Truss actually presiding over an election. Imagine her being allowed to decide the manifesto. I mean, far be it from me to interfere if the Tories want to go for this. Let her decide your policies. Stick retirement age to 80 in order to deal at a stroke with productivity and social care costs if you want. I'll enjoy seeing the Canada 1993 moment that was denied to me this time come to fruition at the next election. And this report about the retirement age in the Mirror, it's just the tip of the iceberg. The reason I bring it up is because this is the sort of thing she says candidly to those in the Tory party, whether members or MPs, because that's what gets me. The people in the party who are listening to her and going, yes, they're listening to her far more closely than we are. We only get the stuff she thinks she can say in public, apart from little leaks like the retirement plan. They get Liz Truss uncut. She speaks to them completely unguarded. They get the full crazy. And they still listen to her. Should we take a look at some of the other things she's been saying recently? So there was an article in the Telegraph this spring, because, you know, it's almost always the Telegraph, They've decided to occupy that position of loonies in chief for the Tory client media these days. She said it was a scandal about the level of power exercised in Britain by people who aren't elected. This from someone who was made Prime Minister without an election. Now, I don't personally make much of that. Most Prime Ministers in my lifetime were made Prime Minister between general elections, basically about 2/3 of them. Keir Starmer is only the 4th person to become Prime Minister as a result of a general election in my lifetime. And yet 11 people have become Prime Minister in my lifetime. So I get that Prime Ministers are not actually elected, really, but the wonder of someone who was allowed to head the government without an election, moaning about people making decisions without being elected, is mind-blowing in its complete lack of emotional maturity. Then in her latest piece, again, the Telegraph, because, like a lot of Tories, she appears to take a swipe at the first-past-the-post system that she was fine with for 14 years. She noted that her Labour rival, who won the seat, did so with only 27% of the vote, which I think was the lowest share of the vote to win a seat at this election. But whining about it without saying the system should be changed is just another example of the sort of childish petulance which forms so much of her character. Also, all she's pointing out is how bad she was as a candidate. She lost what was a really safe Tory seat where anyone in the same position in, like, going way back, would have been used to getting over half of the vote easy. She lost it in the most embarrassing way anyone lost a seat at this election. And she's boasting about it. But then self-awareness was never her strong suit, was it? She also noted the list of problems the Conservatives made for herself, including being clear. She was saying, shouting stop the boats while allowing record numbers of people to come into the country via those boats was insulting voters' intelligence. Yeah, that's a fair comment. So she can correctly identify problems, at least political problems. What she can't seem to do is identify solutions. After all, the small boats issue was an issue when she was the Prime Minister. And what was her policy when she was the Prime Minister? The same policy which began under Boris Johnson and continued under Rishi Sunak. So she doesn't get to point fingers there either. She then went on a bit of a rant about how the Tory party sowed the seeds for this defeat back in 1997. With how they responded not only in opposition but government as well. So basically the Tories have been getting it wrong right back to 1997, apparently. An interesting take when she was a cabinet minister in every single one of the 4 Tory parliaments since, heading up numerous departments. So if the problem was that the Conservatives weren't conservative enough and the party was fouling everything up even in government, then what must she think of the person who seems to have held something close to a record for most government departments running this time, who then ended up as the actual Prime Minister? And ordinarily you'd ignore all this ranting. She should basically be nothing now. The Tories were probably not mad enough to have let her lead the party again. She's not even an MP. I think she should just disappear. Yet there seem to be a surprising number of Tories who really believe she's some sort of genius, or even if not a genius, that her ideas are so obvious that they should definitely adopt them anyway. This is presumably why Conor Burns, another former Tory MP who's lost his seat now, has come out saying that he thinks Truss is unwell and, people need to talk to her and she certainly needs to be quiet. He wouldn't need to draw attention to the crazy unless he feared that it was still taking hold in the existing parliamentary party that neither Burns nor Truss are now part of. She even boasted in the article about her mini budget, the thing which brought her government crashing down in literally record time. And the previous record holder, to be fair, died in office, so that wasn't down to gross stupidity. She actually singled out the legacy, which means she's now about as popular as Vladimir Putin in this country, as if it was a great achievement. And she properly went for it as well. She didn't just talk in general terms about how her unfunded tax cuts were great. She specifically cited her reversal of the health and social care levy for praise. A party where support amongst the under 50s has completely collapsed and is in rapid retreat amongst older voting groups as well. And Truss says, oh yeah, not only did I destabilise your currency and knacker your pension pots, but I also tried to cut funding for health and social care as well. Because that plays well amongst elderly voters. Seriously, if the Tories want to treat her as credible, they're welcome. Let her in your policy unit. She needs a job now anyway, hasn't she? She's unemployed. Jonathan Ashworth found himself in the same situation. He is doing something similar. Install Liz Truss in a think tank. Use her to inform the next Tory election campaign. I dare them. I wouldn't mind another crack at trying to obliterate them completely. No state pension until you're 80 years old. No state provided health or social care. No money. Sorry, do it yourself privately. Whack that on your campaign leaflets and see how many seats you win then. Now that they're firmly in opposition, I don't mind these batshit ideas so much. I don't like the toxic culture wars, though those are harmful even in opposition. But mad as a balloon economic ideas, sure, let them run rip. Let them promote those as much as they like, so much so that even the Tories who agree with them know you don't say those out loud. Go for it. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe for further content and click the like button. You can also sign up for memberships if you'd like to support the channel further. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.